Welcome to the Orvis Fly Fishing Guide podcast with Tom Rosenbauer, bringing you tips, tricks, and techniques to help you get the most from your time on the water. Here's acclaimed fly fishing author and lifelong fly fishing enthusiast, Tom Rosenbauer.
Let's talk about early season or cold water fly fishing this week. Usually what we see in the early season is water that's very cold, 40, 45 degrees or even lower, and moving fairly fast. It's rare to see slow water in early season because most of us have snow runoff or it's rained a lot in the spring. So because trout are cold-blooded, they're not inclined to chase a fly very far early in the season. Now, if you've ever seen the movie Cars, there's a car character in there whose voice I think is by Cheech Marin, and he's kind of this low-slung old caddy or something, and he's always using an expression low and slow, and that's what you want to do early in the season, is to fish your flies low or close to the bottom and slow. Now, that can be a challenge in the early season because you've got fast water, and to get the fly close to the bottom and to keep it moving slowly is really difficult because you've got a lot of current pushing your line along, and it's real tough to get that fly close to the bottom and keep it moving in a realistic manner. The best way to learn how to fish flies early in the season is to either go worm fishing or to watch a good worm fisherman. I don't believe that anybody can be a really good fly fisher unless you've done some worm fishing first, particularly in early season. And if you watch a good bait fisherman or worm fisherman, they cast upstream, they let that worm tumble along the bottom with just enough weight to keep it from hanging up, but they get it down slow, low and slow. They keep their rod tip high, and they let that worm tumble along the bottom in a really natural manner until it gets below them. Then they pick it up and throw it out there again. They don't throw that worm out there and leave it sitting on the bottom of a pool usually, and they don't skip it across the top of the water, reel it in, expecting a trout to get it, because a trout just isn't going to chase something when the water's cold. So you can do the same thing with flies. The thing that comes to mind immediately is fishing a nymph, because a nymph is typically fished close to the bottom, and it's an imitation of an insect larva that lives on the bottom of the stream. Trout are used to seeing things like that. And there are a number of ways to fish a nymph low and slow. One of the best ways, particularly if you're not really adept at nymph fishing, is to use a strike indicator and some weight, either weight on your leader or a weighted fly. So you tie let's say a beadhead hare's ear, or a beadhead pheasant tail, two of the real popular ones, to the end of your say 9-foot leader, and you put a strike indicator on the leader, maybe 6 or 8 feet above the fly. Probably the best rule of thumb is that your strike indicator should be on the leader at a distance that's twice the depth of water. So if the water is 3 feet deep, you want the indicator up about 6 feet on the leader. And you cast that whole rig upstream against the current, and you let that strike indicator wash down toward you. You try to keep it in the same current lane. You don't want it to swing across the current. One of the easiest ways to do that is to keep your rod tip high, keep a lot of line off the water, and keep your rod tip high just like a worm fisherman would. And if you see that strike indicator pause or wiggle at all, you set the hook, and it's either a trout or a log. Now, there are other ways you can fish early in the season. One is to fish a streamer. A streamer is an imitation of a bait fish or a crayfish or other large pieces of food, usually quite a bit bigger than a nymph. And there aren't a lot of nymphs that are really active early in the season because insects aren't hatching yet. The water isn't warm enough. But there are crayfish moving around, and there are minnows swimming around. So a streamer works quite well. What you have to remember is what works during the summertime. In the summertime, when the fish are active, to fish a streamer, we usually cast it up against the bank and strip it back really fast. That doesn't work very well in the early season unless you've got some unusually warm water. The streamer has to be closer to the bottom, and it has to be moving slowly because the fish aren't going to chase it. So you can really do the same thing with a streamer. You can even use a strike indicator, although most people don't. And you take a heavily weighted streamer, one with a cone head or a bead head, or else you can attach a split shot a couple feet above the streamer, throw it upstream, let it wash toward you. In this case, you want to move the streamer a little bit. You want to give a little life to it. The nymph, you didn't want any life at all. You want it to roll along the bottom or roll close to the bottom. With a streamer, you want to every once in a while just give it a little twitch or a little pull, and then let it drift. So it's what it is looking like a minnow that's crippled or lazy, washing down the current, and every once in a while giving a little flip of its tail to try to get away. A trout that's not inclined to chase something might swing over and grab it because it really doesn't have to work too hard to get that streamer. So those are probably the two best ways to catch a trout early in the season. The other thing is that you never know if you could catch a fish on a dry fly early in the season, even on opening day. Fish will, if the water's clear and it's not moving too fast, trout will come up for a dry fly quite early in the season. You have to look for a couple different things. You have to look for a stream that's low, a stream that's clear, the water's not moving too fast. And then within that water, you want to find slower water. You want to find water that's not totally dead because there's no food in water that's not moving. But you want to find a fairly slow current along the bank or in the slow seam in a pool and look very carefully for fish rising in there. What you'll most often encounter nearly anywhere in the country early in the season, if fish are taking dry flies, they're probably taking one of two things, either a midge or a little blue-wing olive dry fly. The blue-wing olive fly, if you carry a blue-wing olive fly in size 18 and 20, a dry fly and an emerger, you're going to be pretty well set. And for the midges, I would say Griffith's gnat in size 20 and 22, and any little old dark nymph in a size 18 or 20 will typically work for a midge larva. So I wouldn't go anywhere early in the season without at least a couple of blue-wing olives and a couple midges in my fly box, because you never know. You probably won't have any dry fly fishing opening day or early in the season, but you always want to be prepared. So thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed this podcast on early season fishing, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Orvis Fly Fishing Guide podcast with Tom Rosenbauer. Since 1856, anglers worldwide have counted on Orvis to help them get the most from their time on the water. To learn more and to shop the world's finest fly fishing gear, including the award-winning zero-gravity Helios rod, visit www.orvis.com/podcast.